I'm tired of watching this leaky faucet. There's a big stain at the bottom of the sink, and there's rust over here, and there's a chip in the enamel over there. It's disgusting. That's why I asked Alain to build me a new vanity, just like this one, but better looking.
I built my bathroom cabinet several months ago. Maybe you already seen it. But my bathroom vanity is the original one. The same one that was there the day we moved in, more than 25 years ago. I need to fix this. So now I'm beginning the construction of our new vanity. After making some plans, I need to cut some wood. Just like for my other cabinet, this one will be made out of maple. The first thing I do is prepare some wood for all the panels. When a bunch of boards are cut a little bit longer than what I need, I surface one side and one edge. Then I cut the other edge parallel to the freshly jointed one. Next, I make large glue-ups with all these boards. In all, I glue 3 panels. While the glue dries, I can prepare more wood for all the rails and stiles for both sides of the vanity. And just like for the panels, I only surface one face and one edge for now. The next morning, the glue is dry, but before doing anything with those, I need to remove the glue squeeze out on the surfaced side. Then I rip strips a little bit wider than the doors panels. And I finish surfacing the panels. While I'm at it, I finish the surfacing of the boards for the rails and stiles. Okay, I have enough to start. But the glue-up panels have to be this thick. I have to go back to the planer. When I'm finished, I have one small problem. The side panels are wider than the width of the doors. So I reglue some panels together to have enough for the sides. But this was planned. That's why the panels are thicker. When the glue is dry, I pass all my glue-up panels through the drum sander to have the right thickness. One thing I have to say is that I'm glad I have an open-hand drum sander. With 2 passes, I'm able to sand those big panels. Now I have a nice pile of sanded panels and another to make the rails and stiles. But my planer leaves a pretty rough surface. I need to sand this. Finally, my wood is ready and I can rip the rails and stiles. After cutting the rails to their final dimensions, I can cut a groove for all the side rails and stiles. Now I need to cut a stub tenon to the end of each rail. The first thing I do is to adjust the height of the blade and cut the first tenon. When it's done, I check the fit. Since it's perfect, I cut all the rest. Now I have to cut the stiles to their final height. After cutting one side straight, I stack them all together and cut them. Now I can measure the size of the panels without forgetting to subtract the thickness of the rubber barrels I'm going to use. Then I can cut both panels. Since the panels are thicker than the groove I've made, I cut a rabbet in the back. Maybe you still remember that last time I routed some V-grooves in my panels. I'm going to do the same thing again. After the first grooves are done, I move the fence and do 2 more. I repeat this a 3rd time to finish the job. When I'm done, I clean the grooves and sand the panels. I'm almost ready to glue the sides, but first I need to sand inside the frames. Now I'm ready. I begin by putting some rubber barrels into the grooves. Spread some glue where the rails will go, spread some on the tenons, and put everything together. After the panel and the last tiles are in place, I can clamp this. I'll also check if it's square. I repeat the same operations for the other side. It's not long before I have both of them drying in the shop. I just need to wait for the glue to dry. But while the glue is drying, I can do something else, like routing some V-edging from solid maple. After the profile is cut, I rip it out of the board. And I repeat this up until I have enough edging for all the plywood for the vanity. Then I cut a small strip of the plywood I'm going to use. This way, I'm sure the edge is not damaged. Then I can route the mating V-shape. Next is as simple as gluing the edging in place. A little bit of glue and lots of clamps. Now I can start to work on the top and back frames. I begin by ripping the rails and stiles. When everything is cut, I assemble the frames and mark where I'll put dominoes and identify each joint. Next, I cut all the mortises. But before gluing all this together, I sand the inside of the frames. Then I glue both frames. After putting some clamps, I leave this alone so the glue can dry. The next day, I sand the excess glue. Now, both frames are ready, but not the sides. I begin by taking care of the glue. But I'm not done. I also need to cut a rabbet at the bottom of each side. After marking what I need to remove, I chuck a router bit in the router and cut the rabbet. And obviously, I didn't tighten the lock knob enough and I messed up again. In case you missed it, look at the replay. With a nice red arrow, it's now hard to miss. So I take a deep breath, make sure the guide won't move anymore, and finish the cut. Then I cut the other side. When I'm done, I square the corners. Now I need to fix this, and I'm going to use this piece of maple for that. First, I cut a piece of paper to the shape of the mess. Then I transfer the shape on the piece of wood and remove some wood. When I'm happy with the fit, I trace and remove what I don't need. Now I can glue this in place. When the glue is dry, I plane the excess. I finish the job with the router again. And here's the result. I wish I could say it's almost invisible, but I can't. I have to live with it. When I put both frames together, I can see they're not exactly the same size. So I clamp them together and sand the difference. Now I can make a dry fit to check how the frames fit with the sides. Since I knew I cut them wider, I'm not surprised they're too wide. I just mark what I need to remove and remove it. Now it's perfect. With all this dry assembled, I can measure the exact size of the plywood bottom. But before cutting the plywood, I first need to take care of the edging. Then I cut the bottom a bit bigger. But I don't like how wide the edging sticks out. To fix this, I begin by making sure the other edge is perfectly parallel to the edging. Then I move the rib fence and cut the edging a bit. Okay, I still have a bit of solid wood, but I'm happy it's what I want. Now I can cut the bottom to the right width. Then the right length. But I can't put it in place because the notches are in the way. I just mark what I need to remove and remove it. When I'm done, I can try the bottom in place. It's perfect. This vanity is far from being finished. I still have a lot to do, and if you want to see what I do next, you have to come back to the Woodpecker.